Hi, this is Vincent George with DTMMB Media. Welcome to episode 2 of Standing Up, which is my 1-year journey to being a stand-up comedian. Since the last podcast, I've been thinking a lot about jokes, and trying to come up with a couple of them. Possibly at least some framework. I've found this more difficult than I thought it would be. Like I said, I kind of consider myself a funny person, but a lot of it is conversational. It's not really kind of one of those things where I think of. I also find that a lot of my jokes are a little too topical on current subjects, and I know that isn't very effective for a stand-up comedy routine. For instance, if I'm talking about something like Miley Cyrus and twerking, that's got a very finite window. I can't really go on for a year telling a joke about that. It's just not going to make any sense. So, all right, the first kind of way I'm thinking is a joke about the first people to eat certain foods. A guy out in the wilderness eating lettuce or eating parsley as opposed to someone who just ate poison ivy. Somewhere along the line, we had this process where someone ate some fucked up shit and paid the price for it. Well, I want to kind of expand on that. Also, taking that conversation and leading to maybe the first guy who smoked pot, or possibly the correlation between cocoa and chocolate and cocaine. I think there's some material there, and that's probably the first thing I'm going to work on. I just got to think it through. The other thing I was kind of thinking of is, when it comes to comedy, how much of it is material as opposed to the person. I can have maybe the funniest story that's ever been told, but if I deliver it as I'm delivering this podcast, without a whole lot of emotion, it's not going to go over very well. So I have to kind of think about delivery. Now, I think I've got pretty good comedic timing and can do that, but it's something I definitely have to think, and I think I have to work on the emotes, the facial telling of a joke as well. And I was thinking about, Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. You could say they are early comedians, right? And they didn't have the luxury of using voice. All their comedy was pretty much physical and displayed through actions and emotions and kind of physical storytelling. So they did not need effective material as far as telling jokes or stories. They could tell it through their actions. And I think that's probably half the comedy. If you look at someone like Louis C.K. perform, a lot of it's in his delivery, and some of it is self-referential as far as making fun of himself and kind of his reactions to that. And he also has some of that physical humor, when he's talking about having sex with someone. He leans over, the stool that's on stage and kind of mimics the motions, and that's funny, and that's part of the delivery, and that's part of the physical humor that he uses, and I think it's very effective. And I have to think along those lines. If I just stand up there and talk like I'm talking now, which is, this is for a podcast, so I have kind of a different voice and emotion I'm going to use if I'm telling stand-up. Eventually I'll have to get into the fact that I have to loosen up and actually act like I am during a comedy routine. But it's that kind of delivery that I have to think about. We did a podcast yesterday here in my studio, as I now like to call it, since I have this professional type equipment. And that was very natural, and there were some jokes that came out of that. But it was more of that, again, conversational. How do you turn that into a routine is something that I'm going to probably struggle with. Because a lot of that was fed off the conversations I was having with my friend Chris, who you hear on other podcasts with me. I'm not going to have that luxury on stage unless, I have one of those type of acts that goes into the crowd and talks to them or feeds off of potential hecklers, but you can't count on that. You can't count on what the other person's going to do or say. So that's not a very safe approach, especially probably off the beginning. Another thing I've been thinking about doing is trying to get into some kind of maybe local improv group, or at least some kind of classes or something to learn improv, to learn that quick on your feet thinking in a certain manner. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to things like Improv for Humans and Comedy Bang Bang. They do a lot of improv on there. I think it's, kind of semi-scripted, but there is a lot of true improv on there, and I'm impressed by it every time I see it. I can't even figure out how they come up with some of this stuff off the top of their head, and I want to learn that craft. I'm fairly quick on my feet with some things, but certainly not to the level that they are, and I want to learn how they do that. Another thing is, I've been expressing myself through tweets with a little bit of comedy, not as consistently as I'd like. I'm no, and I know I mentioned him again, Rob Delaney. I'm not a big fan of his. He's funny, but it's kind of, to me, it's kind of fart humor. Farts are always going to be funny, especially with the right delivery. I don't know. Do you call it delivery when someone farts? And it's comedic. Is that really delivery? I mean, I guess it could be. It's kind of a physical comedy, but I consider his act to be a lot like that, fart humor. But he's successful. I mean, he's got thousands and thousands of followers, and a lot of people do enjoy his stuff. I have friends that really enjoy his stuff, but of course they like fart humor. I like it too. I like it just as much as the next guy, but I don't think that it's so much comedy that you can rely on. Certain people have made a career out of it, but that's just not the comedy I want to do. I'd rather do smarter type comedy, like someone like, George Carlin. I mean, there's a brilliance to that. He's a little more probably political than I'd want to be, with a message at the end of it, kind of reflecting on the craziness of our society and how we do things. I don't really kind of want to go into that, but I do want to have his intelligence in comedy. He's really, I consider him one of the most intelligent comedians ever, as far as being able to kind of analyze the world around us and use that in comedy. So I'm going to read a couple of the tweets that I've done in the past week that I thought were somewhat funny. Now, I don't think any of them are hilarious by any means, but there's something here and a thought that I want to build on. Okay, here's the first one. Let me explain this first one. Okay, there's a movie out about J.D. Salinger. I talked about it during one of my See It or Skip It podcasts, and so I wanted to mention that in a tweet. So here it is. I wanted to see the movie Salinger this past weekend, but it was nowhere to be found. I guess that makes the movie pretty accurate. I thought that was funny. I mean, if you know anything about J.D. Salinger and being a recluse, I mean, that's that kind of plays on that. I thought it was clever. Again, not hilarious, but kind of clever. Here's another one. If they make a supercomputer that's crazy, can they call it the Cray Cray? A little nerdy humor there. I mean, knowing that a supercomputer that was made was called the Cray, and Cray Cray now means crazy, apparently, usually referred to as crazy bitches. That bitch is Cray Cray. So I wanted to use a reference that talked about a supercomputer, but the silly part of it is you have to get part of it past the part that who would make a supercomputer that's crazy. I mean, I guess you have like the Whopper from that movie War Games back in the day. I guess you could say that supercomputer was kind of crazy. It tried to nuke the world and was saved via tic-tac-toe or something. I don't even remember the specifics at this point. So that was kind of my thinking on that. All right, next. I think my dog is a lesbian. I hope she knows that it... All right, let me start over. That sucked. I think my dog is a lesbian. I hope she knows that she doesn't have to hide that. And no, I'm not going to use the doesn't like bones joke. Not funny, really. I admit it. But I think there's potential there. I mean, the initial statement, I think, has potential. I think my dog is a lesbian. And what's funny about that? What has potential about that? Well, if you think about it, you don't think as your dog really is a sexual being, even when it's humping your leg and it's a male dog. I mean, you're just not thinking in a sexual way. At least I hope not. If you are, that's your own thing. But anyway, so the fact that I'm giving a dog sexuality and saying that she might be a lesbian, I think has potential for further jokes. I'm going to, something to explore. Okay. Number 4. People who name their kids after celebrities are stupid. And my dog wrote, God, what the fuck is with me? Let me try that again. People who name their kids after celebrities are stupid. And my daughter, Blade Runner, would agree. All right. I thought this was, a little funny. I saw someone mention that their kid, I don't know, it was Pitt. Their name was Pitt. So I was thinking, okay, this kid is named after Brad Pitt. His first name was Pitt, which is a weird name. So I just thought, that's kind of ridiculous that if people, love celebrities and name their kids after them. I mean, it's all according to what the name is, obviously. Some names are fairly normal, but if it's an easily recognizable celebrity name, like if you name your son Prince after the singer, I mean, that's kind of stupid, I think. So what I wanted to add to that was my own flip of my daughter Blade Runner would agree. So I named my daughter after a sci-fi movie. Now, my daughter's name is not Blade Runner, but that's the joke, right? Not hilarious, but again, I think there's something there. And I think that could probably even be delivered in such a way that you could tell it in a single sentence and possibly get a laugh. All right, I promise you, I'm almost done here. I know it's painful to listen to these, but it's my thought process. If you give me feedback and say that shit is just ridiculous, man, do not even just drop. Like if you think I think my dog is a lesbian, if you think that's stupid, let me know. And tell me why. Tell me why you don't think it has potential, or even tell me why you do think it has potential, or maybe where you'd go with it. All right, let's get this over with. Number 5, the last tweet I'm going to talk about. I'd like to pretend that Switzerland is to Barry Switzer what Latveria is to Dr. Doom. Another kind of nerdy tweet. You have to know that Dr. Doom from the Marvel comics, who usually went up against the Fantastic Four, has a country that he kind of controls named Latveria. And that Barry Switzer, the guy from football, would have Switzerland and kind of be Dr. Doom-like. Now, in a perfect world, I would have accompanied that tweet with a Photoshop of Barry Switzer dressed like Dr. Doom. But I didn't. And as far as jokes go, unless I have and that is possibly an angle to take, is have something like a projector that you carry around. I know there's a guy that does that, and I can't think of his name right off the bat, but kind of displays what he thinks is funny, or does pictures or things like that. I mean, that any kind of different twist or shtick is probably going to be a little more recognizable. But then again, it's going to be hard to do on something like an open mic night to get started out. There's a lot of setup involved. Anywhere from the projector to the power situation to a screen. So I'm not sure if that's really practical. It's maybe something that you would tackle down the road once you've had a little bit of success and a little bit of leeway on things to do and you're actually getting booked for time. I'm about 10 months out from that, I would say, easily. So probably, I said 10 months. I'm so, that's so aggressive. I'm probably 6 years away from that, quite honestly. I mean, come on. Maybe 10, 20 years. I don't know. Who knows? I doubt I'll even be alive in 20 years. So, but that's the rush in doing this. I don't have much more to talk about at this point. I'm hoping to have some actual material to really talk about next time. At least the framework for a real kind of joke to or a bit to go over. So this has been Vince George with episode 2 of Standing Up. Please, if you're listening to this, leave some comments. Let me know what you think. Give me some ideas. If you're a comedian, please reach out to me and let me know what directions I should be taking, because I really need that feedback. Thanks.
This has been a